And welcome back, everybody. In this second tutorial, I'm going to run over the tips and tricks on how to create the text portion of your activity, which is trace a logo, right? So previously, I had let you know that I don't want you to use either the pen or curvature tool to trace every single darn letter. That is too laborious, and it's not the best practice. Designers wouldn't do that unless it was like an initial or just a couple of letters that are very stylized, but not in this case. So here I've got the Texans project up again, and this time I'm going to go over, how I would go ahead and trace the word Texans. So the very first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to create a new layer, and this is going to be the group of shapes that are going to make up the letters for Texans. Now I'm going to do this by starting out by using text to rough in the letters, making them, sort of similar, and then I'm going to transform my letters into outlines, basically changing text into shapes. So let's go ahead and do this. First of all, you should make sure that your graphics layer and your template layers are both locked. So starting at at our layer here, let's go ahead and zoom in till we can see what we're doing nice and big. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here so you can see the whole word Texans. So look at your title and look at what kind of font it is. Now, what I mean is not the type of the font name. I'm talking about category. We learned previously about serif and sans serif fonts. So is this sans serif or serif? Well, there's kind of some flares at the end of the S's in here, and there's some fancy things going on here. But strictly speaking, it's not a serif font. It's a sans serif font. I also noticed that these letters are very fat, so it's kind of a bold sans serif font. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my text tool, and I'm going to go ahead and simply mouse over the left-hand edge, and I'm just going to click my mouse. And what that did is it put in some default Greek text. That's just placeholder text that we're going to change, right? And it has just a default font. Let's find out what it is. I'm going to go over to my properties panel, and I can see what type of font it is and the size and all that stuff. Now, what I had asked you guys to do before, and what I would suggest, is if you like to keep your layers panel open, you can have your control panel open. Remember, the control panel is that skinny strip on the top, so you can control your tools a lot more easily. So right here, I can see my default font and what size it is. So remember, we talked about, it's a sans serif font. Let's see if we can find one that's a little closer to what we have here from my words. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my down arrow, and I'm going to kind of scroll around. I'm going to ignore all the serif fonts, and I'm going to look for a nice big fat sans serif font that I think might work. Well, this one might work. Let's see what else I got here. Now, I'm using my personal computer, and I have a lot more fonts on here than what you have on your machine. Nevertheless, you will probably find something that will be close. So, let's see here. Kind of doing this a little on the, I don't know about that one. I'm going to go up a little farther. This one looks like it might be pretty close. It's a nice, thick, fat sans serif font. I'm going to go ahead and try it. So I'm going to click on it. And of course, it's way too small, so we're going to enlarge it quite a bit. But before we do that, let's go ahead and change the word into something that's meaningful. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the word Texans. And I'm going to use my caps lock key because all of my letters here are all in capitals. There. I'm going to go ahead and change my font size. Oops, I have to select it using my selection tool first. I'm going to go way big, all the way up to 72 points. So there we go. You can also enter your point size as well. So I'm going to go ahead and using my selection tool, I'm going to move it over the word Texans. And although it's really close when it comes to the length, but these letters are way too tall. But using the selection tool, you can just go ahead and mouse over this anchor here, and I can squish down my text. Now it's a lot closer. So I like this, and I'm going to keep it. So I'm going to go ahead and move this around a little bit. I'm going to see if I can match up that letter T. Now, it works pretty well, but as I go along here, I need a little bit more space. So what I'm going to do is go back to Properties, and I'm going to space out my letters just a little bit. You might have to do the same, or you might have to squeeze them in. we're going to use tracking for that. You guys know that tracking will allow you to squeeze or expand groups of letters. So I'm going to go +10, and that is pretty darn close. All right. Now, to make things a lot easier for me here, I'm going to, let's see here. Well, first, I'm going to transform my text. So right now, Illustrator sees this as a word, Texans. Let's transform these letters into shapes. So you do that by mousing over the Type menu, and you're going to choose Create Outlines. It's right about here. Now, what just happened is now Illustrator sees all of these letters, not as letters anymore, but just plain old generic shapes. Let's go to our Layers panel. And you're going to see in our new layer 3, which I'm going to double click on here and rename this text. Still have my caps lock key. I'm going to open this up, and I see a group. So when I did that, it actually grouped all of these shapes. I don't want to do that. I want to ungroup this. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my parent layer. Okay, it kind of acts like a folder, right? I'm going to go over to my flyout menu for my layers, and I'm going to choose Release to Layers. So I'm going to go ahead and put sequence in there, and I'm going to go ahead and click off of everything, and I'm going to mouse over the letter T. Ah, look at that. And look what I can do here. Not only did it just select the letter T only, but now if I click and I move it, I can move that letter. Now, keep in mind that Illustrator does not see this as the letter T any longer. So how do you manipulate these shapes now that you have these individual shapes here into the text that you have? Well, now that these are individual shapes, you can add or subtract anchors and manipulate them to create the style that you see. Let me demonstrate by doing the letter T here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And just to make this a little bit more clear, I'm going to create a fill. I'm sorry, I'm going to create a stroke here of black, and I'm going to get rid of the fill. Now you can see this a little bit better. So here's my letter T, and the gray is the actual letter for the T. So I'm going to choose my direct selection tool. Remember that? So I'm going to go ahead and mouse over an anchor. I'm going to click it twice so I can activate it. And I'm going to go ahead and move it. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with all the other ones. It pays to line up one edge a little as best as you can. That way you do a little bit less work. There we go. So there's my letter T. So when I finish all these letters, I'm going to get rid of this stroke here and refill it with a color, probably black. So I want to go over to this letter A here. And I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to go ahead and create an outline and get rid of that fill so we can see the difference between the real A and the one I've got here. Oops. Should probably go for my regular selection tool here. Now I've got those little pointy things on the side. So how do you create those? Now I've shown you how to do that before, but I'm just going to go ahead and line this up as best as I can. Grabbing my direct selection tool, I'm going to line up everything else first, and then I'm going to go ahead and create those wings, if I can call it that. Now look here, I have an extra anchor. What am I going to do about that? Well, if I hit the delete key, I can go ahead and get rid of that. It messes up that line. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my pen tool, and I'm going to mouse over one of the anchors, and that reactivates the line. So notice how I have my line segment, I have my pen tool activated again. So I'm going to mouse over this one, and that will close it up and make that shape. Going back to my direct selection tool and activating this, now I got rid of that extra anchor here. All right, so let's finish this up. I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to do the best I can and do it quickly so I can get to the wings. Okay, now I'm ready for the wings. So how the heck do you do that? Well, all I really need to do here is I need to add 3 more anchor points. One for here, one for here, and one for here. So do you guys remember how to add an anchor point? All you got to do is grab the pen tool, mouse over where you think you're going to want to stick an anchor, and notice how a little plus sign shows up next to my cursor. So I'm going to click that. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make one here. And then I'm going to make one about in the middle. I'm just zooming in a little bit so you can see this better. I put one here, here, and one in the middle. Now these two anchors are gonna physically anchor down my line. Grabbing my direct selection tool, I'm gonna activate this middle one and simply pull it out. And that's how I create a custom letter from a font, from characters. So you're going to find a similar font, rough it in, get it about that same size, create outlines, and you're going to ungroup your group here, and then you're using the direct selection tool and the pen tool. You're going to go ahead and you're going to manipulate that. So that's basically how you get started on that. You may not want to have outlines here or a stroke, so you may just want to fill it with no stroke. That will probably help you out as well. So have some fun with this. Ask me or your neighbor if you get stuck. Good luck and have some fun with this. Talk to you later.